Welcome to the Gridiron Unfiltered podcast, powered by Recon Sports, the show where we take a deep dive into the world of sports performance. I'm your host, Danny Davis, and today we're flipping the script. On this show, we've been talking a lot about what college football looked like 10, 15 years ago. But in this episode, we're going to be looking ahead. What might college football look like 15 years from now? If it continues to follow the NFL's lead, we may see a world where elite athletes build out full, individualized performance systems from nutritionists, sleep coaches, mental performance, all working for them. We've seen examples of this in the NFL, like the Tom Brady's of the world, who spent millions each year on his body, not just for peak performance, but for availability and longevity. It was an investment that extended his career and maximized his value. Now with the NIL and House Act putting serious money in the hands of college athletes, will we see a similar shift in college sports? Now, since this role doesn't really exist in college athletics today, we've brought on a phenomenal guest to help us look what the future might hold. Shawn Pitcher is a performance dietitian working in the tactical and military space, specifically with Air Force pilots. But before that, he spent years in the athletic weight room helping athletes reach their peak performance on and off the field. He doesn't just teach pilots how to fly, he helps them stay ready to fly. His job is to support the physical, nutritional, and cognitive performance, so when it's ready to go, they are mission ready. Shawn Pitcher, welcome to the show.
Appreciate that awesome introduction. I'm super excited to be here with you. Many probably don't know, but I've known Danny since he was in high school. We both played football together back in upstate New York. So it's an awesome opportunity to kind of come full circle and be able to have a conversation with him again around sports, where everything kind of started with our initial relationship.
That's right. That's awesome. So Shawn, let's start with this. When looking at the NFL right now, we're seeing more and more athletes invest heavily into their personal performance outside of the facility. We just looked at the example with Tom Brady, who reportedly spent over $1 million a year on his body when he was playing. What do you think is the biggest advantage of getting that type of personalized support outside of the team? And why do you think so many NFL athletes are maybe turning to these private, individualized programs rather than just relying on what the team provides?
I think the term I always like to go with when I speak to my athletes is your body is your business, right? And that's not a term that I created myself, but that's something I've got from Cam Winston. He was one of our leadership coaches at one of the organizations I was with. And at the end of the day, if you're not taking care of yourself, you only get one body. Right? We're not cyborgs yet. We're not attaching on like artificial arms to each other through AI or something crazy. But if you do not take care of what you have available to you now, how long is your career going to last, right? And most of the time, as we know, most professional athletes, especially NFL athletes, right, it could be anywhere between maybe 1 to 4 years, if they can even make it that far, that they're going to last in the league. And a lot of times it might take until year 4, year 5 to get that bigger contract. That's if you're successful, if you're providing a lot of value back to the team. But you can't provide that value to the team in the first place if you're not available. Availability is the absolute key. If you're not being able to stay available on the field 85, 90% of the time, right, your value essentially is going to go down, right? Someone's not going to give you this $50 million, $100 million plus multi-million dollar contract if they don't feel like you can be a continued asset to that team. So the other thing I always like to say as well is if you think about the entirety of your day, right, you think about nutrition specifically, sleeping, eating, and hydrating, right? If you were to give it a numerical value to how many hours you spend doing those 3 things a day, and I've done a lot of initial nutrition assessments with my form that I use, and probably on average, 40 to 60% of your day is doing those 3 things. So if we're not doing those 3 things and optimizing those things at a very high level, it's either going to impact the athlete's performance acutely or chronically. As we know, it can add up over time. Right? It's like someone telling you, hey, don't eat this food now because it's not good for you. But they're like, if you eat a little bit of it, it's not a big deal. But still think about that. If I still eat a little bit of something that's low or a low quality option for me, if I chronically do that days and months and years over time, there's probably going to be some kind of consequence or adverse effect that may happen down the road. We may not think about now, but we always got to be thinking about the long game going forward.
Yeah, when you say that, that's a lot of hours during the week that you're spending sleeping, eating, recovering, and there's so much attention on the weight room when that might be 10, 15 hours a week, a very much smaller percentage of what we just looked at outside of the weight room. So big emphasis on the performance side, being able to really put your time and attention to that is going to show up in the weight room, is going to show up on the field. And you've seen kind of both sides of this firsthand. You've built programs for entire teams, large groups, but now you're working a little bit more one-on-one and with specialized care. What's the biggest difference between these two worlds, and what changes when you go from programming a full roster to working directly with a small group of athletes?
You could be a lot more personalized when you have that one-on-one opportunity. Usually my big thing I like to start most clientele or folks with is, I call it the big three buckets. One, I like to focus on doing some kind of lab work and biomarkers, right? We can feel good externally, but if we don't know what's going on internally, right? Metabolically, cardiovascularly, micronutrient deficiencies, hormone-wise, if we need to make adaptations to our training, our fueling, are we not getting in certain foods? Do we have to supplement? Because we are at a state where even though all the foods we're eating, we're still not meeting those micronutrient needs. So I find that very critical and important. Second thing would be getting some kind of body composition testing done. Typically gold standard right now that's used in a lot of organizations, getting DEXA, because you can look at segmental muscle tissue. So differences in muscle tissue between left and right limbs. Also looking at bone mineral content. Some folks are also doing something called ISAC anthrometric testing. So looking at a 5-way fractionator, or looking at the body's ability and their structure to hold on to mass, right? The best example I can give you, and I've had numerous conversations with individuals at different levels, but let's say you got a tight end. He's 6'6" and he's 260. But the offensive line coach comes over to him and says, "Hey, I think you got a great frame. You could be an offensive lineman," which you've seen like time and time again with like kind of that position. So they're like, okay, well, if you're going to be an offensive lineman, right, at this level, you're going to need to be like 300 to 340 pounds, right? But let's say we do testing on this person, and structure-wise, bone-wise, they're not made to carry 340 pounds of mass, whether it's fat mass, muscle tissue, combined to both, et cetera, right? So now you're putting, let's say, excessive mass on an individual structure that isn't able to handle it, and then now you're putting him through extraneous training and or the physical demands of the sport being football. Well, if his structure can't hold that mass amongst the amount of strain and going face to face against a defensive lineman, linebacker, etc., well, that person may be at a higher chance for getting hurt, or more frequency of getting hurt, because their body cannot handle that mass over time with the different rigors they have to do. So that's something that's being implemented at multiple levels. So that way, if you're making at the higher levels, right, an informed decision, cool, this guy's a talented athlete, but maybe in college we saw he's had a lot of injuries. Or, cool, we're going to draft this guy, but his history was he played this position, he switched this position. We did ISAC testing amongst many different things, obviously, as we know they do, to make decisions on who they're going to draft, who they're going to sign as a free agent. But he has this injury history. We don't really know if this is his natural position. Do we want to invest $20 million over 3 or 4 years? Is his body really going to actually hold up? So for us as a dietitian, right, that provides kind of a piece of the puzzle to the scouting department or the people that are bringing people in, to give them kind of one more piece of information to the layers of information to make a more informed decision. Is this a good decision to bring on this person? Or, hey, maybe we think we would better play this position because of structurally, I think you would fall better into this position on the field. So body comp, you can do a lot of different things with that from our end. And then definitely just I have a data-driven nutrition assessment sheet that I use, so I can do a pre and post nutrition knowledge, sleep behaviors, hydration, and then just looking at their overall fueling. And from there, right, it provides kind of 3 different pieces of data that I can use to give feedback to that individual, that more one-on-one approach, to give them what is their baseline. How do I work with the other practitioners that they are working with as a part of their team? And are we actually getting the results that we want to? And do we have the information and data to be able to drive those results, right? Now, I'm not saying you can't do that in a athletic organization, right? There is plenty of organizations that have huge teams, that have great staffs, that have lots of resources, that are 100% right now doing that exact same thing. But to be able to replicate that across all levels of athletics, all sports, lower levels of college athletics can be very challenging because of the resources and what you could do. So you might just have to do the best bang for your buck. They may not have money to go do labs. They may not have the fancy devices or ability to do body composition. You may just be doing pre and post weights. So that's where, as a practitioner, right, you got to be able to be flexible in a team setting and figure out, what do I have? What is my team? What is my resources? Kind of what is like cool baseline I'm able to do, and then cool think and dream big picture. But is it realistic I can get to that point, or am I going to need to go to another organization that may have the ability to be able to do that? Versus one-on-one, they're coming to you one-on-one. They obviously most likely have some level of resources where they're willing to invest in that team to be able to do all those things, or they wouldn't have came to you in the first place.
Right. Yeah, that example you gave with the tight ends, the tight end going to offensive tackle, there could be a major friction point if the team maybe doesn't have access to those scans or those bone density things, can't see the data, see the numbers to where he can't hold this on his body. Maybe this tight end does have someone outside, working on his body who's telling him this. Now there's this kind of, if the tight end was be like, hey, my nutritionist said I don't have the body frame to hold 70 more pounds and play tackle, I don't want to play tackle. That's where I think there might be this friction. And I think maybe nutrition might be the first domino to fall when we're looking 15 years in the future. I think the weight room, getting specialized weight room care, might be someone coming in and be like, hey, I'm not doing the weight room anymore. I have my own strength coach. I think we're really, really far away from that if that ever happens. But nutrition might be the first domino to fall. And that example that you just gave right there might be it, because when you look at the nutritionists, and even if they do have the scans, they're looking at 110 players, 115 players, a lot of position groups. Now, when you look at it individualized from a practitioner standpoint, and maybe they have different types of technologies, assessments, things to get data, they're going to be able to advise that athlete, advise that tight end, you cannot play. If you want to be in this sport for a long time, you cannot go play offensive tackle, because if you do, and you go put on 60 pounds, and now you can't play because your body can't support it, you basically just ruin that guy's career.
Like maybe I'm just done, and like that's my career because I put on too much weight. I had a significant injury, and maybe that significant injury is something that I can't physically come back from. Or, right, we got to think about the mental approach, right? I've been super fortunate to work with cognitive performance, sports psychology, right? We always say if you're not right from the neck up, right, from the strength side or the nutrition side, hey, you probably need to go have a conversation with them, because you're not in the right mindset to be able to make some of these decisions, change some of these behaviors that we want you to. So there's no sense us beating our head into a wall. I think you need to get help from those professionals. And once you're in that mindset and that state where you feel like you're able to accept and receive suggestions or recommendations from us, we're going to have a conversation as a team. And when you feel like you're at that point, we'll do that. And that's where a lot of times, right, you'll get like certain staffs and coaches are like, this guy's got to do this and this guy's got to do this. And it's like, hey, like he's just not ready. You're like, he's not in the mental state to be able to do that. And I can keep shoving stuff down his throat, but that may fracture or impact our relationship. They may not want to come talk to me anymore because they see me as the guy that just wants me to lose weight, and they want me to do this, they want me to do that. And I was a Division III athlete. I know you were a Division I athlete, right? I doubt you want someone just throwing something down your throat 24/7. You're going to have some kind of adverse reaction, and you're going to have some feeling towards that person because they're not really helping you. They're just trying to get something done that they want to get done or someone else wants to get done. There's less of that relationship and honesty and development amongst each other where you're going to want to do something back for them.
Big time. Just going with the cognitive space, what are some of we talked about the body composition, some of the scans and whatnot. What are some of the tools or things that people are using in the cognitive space to help maybe assess what is going on from in someone's brain?
Well, I wouldn't be honestly the best person to answer that, be that mostly my stuff is focused on the dietitian realm. I heavily rely on those practitioners that I work with, and you're going to have different levels of cognitive personnel. A lot of terms that can be thrown around there where you've got cognitive performance, mental conditioning, you've got sports psychology. And a lot of times we get those confused. It's the same thing with nutrition, right? Oh, nutrition. Are you a nutritionist? Are you a dietitian, right? A nutritionist could be a flyby. I get a certification on the weekend and now I'm a nutritionist, right? A dietitian, you have to actually go get your master's. When I was going through, I got my bachelor's, I had to get 1,200 hours of experience. I had to take a registration exam, and then I have to get 75 hours every 5 years of continuing education to sustain my credentials to be a practitioner, right? If you look at the cognitive space, right, you've got folks that could be that cognitive/mental conditioning coach, but that doesn't mean that they're handling the clinical side, right? And maybe they're just focusing primarily on the performance side. So like where my current organization and a couple organizations ago that I was with, they focus solely on performance. But if there was a clinical situation from a psychology or mental standpoint, we would then transition them to a sports psychologist who actually has the medical background to be able to handle things like, let's say, bipolar or multiple personality disorder, significant clinical anxiety, depression, for example, things like that. So that way, right, depending on the organization, right, you might have the 2 layers of help for mental health. You have hey, I got the folks that are focusing on, hey, I'm in big games, I'm in front of 70,000 people. Every time it gets down to crunch time, I get super nervous and I make a mistake. Cool, that's probably more of a performance standpoint. Versus like, hey, when I get done with the game and I lose, I get really down on myself and like mentally I get a really bad headspace and it kind of leads me into just thoughts and directions that I don't want to go down to. Okay, well that sounds probably more like a clinical space. We got to maybe go to the sports psychologist instead. And then you kind of have those 2 layers of approach, like let's help with the clinical sense, but let's help once you get back from the clinical sense, how do we start fixing some of the performance aspects? Because if we can't perform under pressure, in duress, which is a lot of times what happens as an athlete, right? And you crumble, we're not putting out good game tape, we're not putting out good numbers, we're not able to show the value that we can be able to contribute to the team and help win games, etc. And that's going to definitely impact what you're going to be able to do short-term and long-term in these different spaces as well.
Big time. So at the end of the day, it's all about what you could put on the field. But if you're not taking care of all these different layers that come outside of the field, you're going to see that on-field performance significantly be impacted. And right now, we're seeing this level of individualized care in the NFL. Not so much in college sports. They have a lot of resources within the facility, but haven't really embraced maybe the one-on-one care. One organization, the organization that you work for, has really embraced this, and the approach with the Air Force and specifically how they train their pilots. Because it's not just about the time they spend in the cockpit mastering flight systems. The Air Force takes this holistic approach, investing in their physical readiness, mental clarity, nutritional performance, because when a pilot isn't available or isn't at his peak or her peak, that's not just an inconvenience. That's a mission risk and a huge financial loss. So what can you walk us through what you're doing right now with Air Force pilots, and what does that day-to-day look like in helping them best perform when they actually need to go fly?
Yeah, the best example I like to give is, let's say I'm a basketball player and I'm going on the free throw line and I miss both my free throws. Well, guess what? If I go to the free throw line again, I'm going to have opportunities to get those shots up again. If I mess up an aircraft, that's life or death. Right? It's a totally different situation, different circumstance. Like, you got to be on point, focused, concentrated. It's a huge cognitive load. There's multiple things going on inside, outside the aircraft, talking to your co-pilot, talking to your possible flight engineer, person that's behind you. You've got a lot of input that's going on all at one time. And you got to be able to process it, apply, and then be able to get through the different rigors that may essentially develop because of that. So, luckily in the military space, right across multiple different areas of the military, they've been investing in having practitioners like us. So in our end, we have cognitive performance, we've got strength and conditioning coaches, and then we have dietitians. If you look at more of the spec ops world, right, aside from those 3 modalities, you may get folks like social workers, massage therapists, physical therapists, athletic trainers, just because those are the folks that are having to stay, if you want to say it, game ready 24/7, because they may have to go on a mission tomorrow, right? You don't know. So yeah, they get provided a little more resources, but they're also folks that may have to go fight for our country at the drop of a dime at any second. So they're having to be in a constant state of readiness. Now, where I'm at currently, I'm at a undergraduate base. So we're kind of like, how I like to say is like, we're like high school. They're just coming out of ROTC. They're just coming out of, the Air Force Academy, and they are getting their feet wet and learning how to Air Force. They're getting their feet wet and learning how to be a pilot, right? So it's kind of like square one. They'll go from us to go to a graduate school and do kind of what I call going to college. And then after they're done with graduate school, they're either going to go to a base in-state or out of the country, depending on what their path may be or what aircraft they're going to fly. And they will then transition off to that. And I call that kind of going pro, if you want to say. So at our base, what we essentially do is we're providing a lot of the foundation to help them kind of progress going forward. So we do group classes, so meaning syllabus classes. So that's classes that's required for them to have to take, that's required part of the program. We do what's called non-syllabus classes, so non-required classes. We typically do those a lot for our incoming casuals or incoming students that have time before they transition to actually start the program, to do a lot of the kind of the very bare bone basic topics. So like going over carbs, fats, proteins, hydration, doing their one-on-one nutrition assessment, right? Just kind of setting the tone with there. We do a ton of obviously one-on-one work, individual work with them as well. We'll do body composition testing, obviously working on different ways, hopefully in the future to do some hydration testing to get some either real-time data back to them on how much fluid loss they have, how much percentage of body weight loss, different losses with their electrolytes, so that way you can provide more personalized hydration protocols. Again, if you think about right now, spring and summertime, in the southeast, it's going to be probably 90 plus degrees. It's going to be 85, 90% humidity. If you think of them like a football player, they're wearing gear from head to toe. The only place for heat to be able to relieve is from the neck up. Everything else is covered. So their risk for heat-related illnesses is going to be a lot more significant. They're not in air-conditioned aircrafts. We're flying old Vietnam Hueys, right? There's no air conditioning these things. So if we're not prioritizing nutrients that are going to help to sustain and rapidly rehydrate them, or we're not making sure we're getting enough fluids in these folks, right? A lot of times, right, the back half of that training for that day, that's where mistakes happen. That's where cognitively we start seeing a lack of concentration, lack of focus, just because they're not able to sustain it if they're not fueling and hydrating appropriately, or if they're not recovering. You could put as much as you want into training, right? You talked about Tom Brady earlier, but if you're not putting the other effort in the 18 to 20 hours of the rest of the day to recover, then how well are you going to be able to continue to replicate the level that you need to day in, day out to keep passing through the course? Because if you don't pass, right, or you don't pass a certain amount of rides, or you don't get past this certain block, you're probably going to get relocated to some other job. You're not going to be flying, right? We need folks that are going to be able to optimize, perform at their highest ability through multiple different situations. And, it's not for everybody, and not everybody makes it through, and that's okay. There's other opportunities in other places in the military for you, but it kind of puts a lot of extra stress on these type of personnel, which is why we have us as support to help kind of shepherd them along. And then hopefully, right, that helps them as they transition through the different layers. And it kind of goes beyond just the pilot too, right? Whatever we teach them, that's going back to their wife or their husband. That's going back to their kids. They may go back to other family members because they learned stuff from us that help them, that they want to now help their family. So when you look at it realistically, right, like what is the rate of return? Well, we're helping much more beyond just our squadron. Like we're helping whole families be a lot more successful, a lot more healthy.
Which is a huge part. And, I was in the Army for almost 10 years, and I've spent a lot of time in a Desert Storm Humvee with no air conditioning, miserable. And I'll be honest, from my level, they didn't really care about what I was eating or my hydration. As long as I left with as many MREs as they said to take, they were good. So, but I think when it comes to like the pilots and why there's such an emphasis, and even when I was in the Army, that the pilots, I think they had to get like 12 hours of sleep a day. Like that was required for them. Why? Because they are flying multi-million-dollar aircrafts, and if you take a wrong turn on a Humvee, You go into a ditch, you can pop right back out. If you're in a plane or in a helicopter and you take one wrong turn, like you said before, that could mean your life. And it costs so much more resources to get that pilot up into the air, to get that aircraft up into the air, to maintain that aircraft. So do you think that maybe the Air Force has really placed this emphasis on the pilot aspect because of the investment that they're making just to get them there, and then for their ultimate availability and longevity?
Yeah, think about it. We're allowing them to hopefully fly for a longer period of time. If they're able to stay healthy, if they're able to stay resilient, if they're able to have less aches and pains, right? Because if you imagine, right, if I'm flying a helicopter and I'm got my hand on the collective and my hand on my cyclic, and I'm sitting like this for hours and having to hold that position, then fly aircraft or whatever's going on, weather and outside, that's a weird, awkward position. And then on top of that, it's just shaking the shit out of you. Like you're on an actual, what do they like to say? Like a roller coaster, or you could be, it's like you're sitting on a washing machine, just sitting there shaking the entire time, right? Like those vibrations chronically over time can wreak havoc on your neck and back. So strength and conditioning is essential there, right? Making their bodies resilient, allowing them to be able to hold in those awkward, weird positions for long periods of time, trying to reduce those injuries from happening. And if we can have less people going to the VA, we got less people that are having to go to the doctors because we've got support staff like near the squadron or in the squadrons. And, let's say we're getting X more people able to fly longer, or we're getting more people through the pipeline, right? If it costs X amount of dollars to produce a pilot, and let's say like the attrition rate is, 10, 15%, and we cut that down to, let's say 2 to 5%, right? Think about the amount of money a support staff like us is able to save the military space when now you're able to keep more pilots available or get more pilots through the program, especially at a time with all the crazy stuff that's going on, and we want to obviously, produce folks at a pretty decent rate, right? Well, how fast and how high quality can we produce the folks that are going into these aircrafts to fly them, and how long can we keep them available to do the mission that we have to do at hand? That's always going to be the constant and the chronic question that's always asked, but having these folks in these spaces like us is going to play a key role, many roles, to allow them to be able to continue to keep doing that at the level they need to. And do they get out, let's say at 30, 40 years old, and they're less, the whole pilots always joke, are we then now less broken? Can I go actually enjoy and do stuff with my family? Can I go and lift my grandkids up because my spine or my arms are not so broken that I can't even do that, right? And when you can provide some better post-career, post-military life for these folks where they're not hobbling around, like that's going to be huge for them the next half of their life with their families that they're going to greatly appreciate.
Yeah. And I didn't even think that's a great segue, and now bringing it back to football. Like maybe in the college world, maybe it's not you're going to go to the NFL, but you're going to be 4 years in college football, maybe probably even 5 with red shirts. Wear and tear on your body, what is that going to do to your body when you leave? So you don't go to the NFL, there's going to be some negative impact from head to toe, quite literally. And when we look at the amount of money that the pilots are being invested, or the Air Force is investing in pilots, there's a lot of money now being invested into these athletes. So does this type of shift happen with the athletes? So let's say 15 years from now, top tier college athlete does all this specific work at the film practice lifting at the facility, but now is outside of the building and he wants to build his own team around him for everything else. From your perspective, what would that look like, and maybe how would you advise that athlete to take the first steps in building a team like that?
I mean, you're already seeing it, to be honest with you, right? There's a lot of practitioners, even physicians that I know that are kind of developing what you would consider concierge services. And I think some of the part of that is they want to keep a lot of their information and data private, so that way folks aren't aware of what's going on, and then they have that kind of team lead or that group of practitioners that are then giving feedback that the athlete is willing to give feedback, or that's safe to give feedback, that isn't potentially impacting money or opportunities, if we want to look at it from that perspective. You also got a lot of athletes that are now seeing through this opportunity with NIL, there's a lot of money I can make in 4 years if I can stay healthy and stay on the field, right? So if that means I need to hire an external team, and again, this is nothing against, the college ranks. It's very challenging, right? Like being a dietitian in the college ranks, you've got 100 to 150 athletes, right? To be able to give individualized care to every single one of those athletes, you'd have to have a pretty significantly large dietetic team. Who knows, maybe 3 to 5 dietitians on staff. Like if you really wanted to get nitty gritty and go over a lot of this stuff. I'm not saying it's impossible. There's definitely organizations that invest and they do that. But for most teams to be able to do that is super challenging, which is why some athletes may decide in the off season or certain times of the year to deter or reflect, go to another opportunity or option. So that's where, how do they develop and how do they build that team? The best thing I could suggest to these athletes, please don't just go to some willy-nilly random person on social media. Like, have they been in the field? Have they been boots in the ground? Have they been actually doing this for a period of time with athletes, right? You don't just want some 1 million Instagram guy who does X and X and he's had a couple folks on. Like, is this person truly legitimate, and is he actually legitimately getting these people results, right? Does he actually have a sound foundation, he or she, to be able to get them those results? Or a lot of times, right, it's through word of mouth, right? Having conversations like, who are the folks out there that I should be having on my team? Who's the person that's going to get me to the level that I need to get to? And who do I need to specifically contact for that? And sometimes they don't even try to go find people. They have people that they trust to ask, that have their group that they trust, or they might ask their agent. A lot of agents will also have people over time that they kind of develop under their tree as, all right, I'm an agent for 20 NFL players. Okay, well, I've got 2 or 3 strength coaches at performance facilities based on this part of the country. And if you need this, I'll call this guy, and this is where I suggest you to go to. So I wouldn't say there's one perfect avenue or way to go. There's a lot of different ways that the athlete could be pushed or motivated to go. But I would definitely say from an athlete's perspective, make sure you're making really well-informed decisions, asking questions, and actually challenging the folks that are going to be your practitioners to see if they can actually provide back the value that you're looking for. Don't always just go with someone because someone just says to go with somebody, because that doesn't automatically result in they're going to be the best fit for you. They may be a great person, but maybe the personality doesn't fit either. We've also had that before too, right? I've had athletes where I'm just like, hey, this is not going to work. I don't think we're going to be a good fit. And then that's okay, but always have another option for them that they could possibly go to. And just know that not every person is going to like you. Not every person is going to want to work with you. And that's okay, right? That's just life. That's working with other people and organizations, or working with other people and jobs. Not everyone's going to be your friend. Not everyone's going to like you. Can you either have good working relationships or just come to a realization like it may not be the best fit at the end of the day working with that person?
Big time. And you look at like the social media following of, he has a million followers, and you like maybe sign up for a thing and you're just like getting a member of his team. You're not even getting who you're actually looking at on social media to be your coach. You're getting one of his coaches that he's coaching to coach you. So it could be, definitely you need to look out for where to find these people, where you're getting your information from, who you're putting in your corner. And I know, Shawn, you do some work outside of the Air Force for some individualized training. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's something I've wanted to do for quite a while, is just have that private practice or that outside work that I've been able to kind of develop now. So I work with quite a variety of different folks, first responders, special forces, military tactical personnel, still work with athletes across multiple levels, high school up to very high levels. I really enjoy it because I get a good mixed bag of folks. It keeps me really sharp in multiple different areas, which I think is important. You don't ever want to be a one-trick pony, definitely being diverse, because if you as a businessman yourself, right, like you can't just focus on only just solely one small little niche, of the business, or one small niche of folks. It's like, if I'm trying to overall develop and create income over time, right, I don't want to get too broad where it's watered down and it's not very good. But like, what are the populations and places that I know that I'm going to be able to help? Like me personally, I don't want to work with clinical folks, right? Like diabetics, hypertension, heart disease, right? Like I have the clinical background because of my credentials and I'm able to work with those, but is that my preferred space to be in? No, I'd rather work in the spaces that I kind of listed because that's where I'm motivated and excited and have a lot more knowledge and boots on the ground information to essentially be able to do. So, like we mentioned a little bit earlier, with talking with athletes and finding a good person, a lot of times I'll do like a 15, 20-minute phone call with every single person before we even talk about anything of like, what is it going to cost? What are we going to do? Let's just chat. What is your goals? What do you want? Why did you reach out to me for nutrition? What are you already doing? Explaining kind of like what I do from my side, and then asking the ultimate question at the end, like, do you feel like this is for you? Do you feel like this is a good fit? Because if it isn't, cool. Great to know you. Maybe we'll connect another time. Maybe there's something, if you have somebody else you feel like would be a good fit, we can have a conversation kind of going forward with that person. Awesome. But like to have that just initial talk to see what we want to do. And then off of that, right, like the things I talked about earlier, if they end up wanting to go forward, we'll do the labs, we'll do the body comp, we'll do the initial assessment. I'll do a lot of check-ins after that. I'm a little bit different maybe than some other practitioners. I don't just hand you a meal plan, right? Because if I just hand you a meal plan, I'm not teaching you anything. And we've seen that kind of time and time again is here, hand them this $50 meal plan and it's got, a calculator on it and like, just go figure it out, right? That's like a doctor saying like, oh, you've got diabetes, just go eat better. Well, how do I do that? I don't know what to do with that. So what I like to say is like, I'm going to educate you first because you need to know and have the background knowledge first. But then how are we going to apply the information to your schedule and routine? Because every single person that's listening to this podcast episode is going to be different and have a different job, different work, different schedule, different type of training that they're doing. So if I were to slap you a generic cookie cutter meal plan, that's not going to teach you how to work that around that schedule routine. So that's where me coming in with the education part, but like, okay, cool, you train at this time. This is how you should change your carbohydrates and fueling around here. Or, oh, you're a second and third shift worker. All right, we got to think about possibly doing this with your sleep. You're probably going to have to change your meals and snacks at this time. We're going to have some better nutrient periodization and timing. Like, there's no AI system that's going to be able to teach that. When you have somebody who's had experiences being involved with people that have done that at those different time frames than a computer. So, AI is going to be beneficial for some stuff, but I'm going to say AI is not going to be the answer. You're still not going to be able to beat the actual human interaction and beat the actual experiences that people have had when you've worked with people firsthand and you see what works and what doesn't work, or something may not work for one person, but you've got 10 tools in your tool chest that you can pull out and give them several other options that maybe will make a difference and work for them because the first things didn't pan out.
Yeah. No, the AI and you can go to ChatGPT and get a meal plan or a workout plan or just type in your macros or whatever you want. But there's such a difference when working with someone like you who's been in this for a decade, if not more now, and maybe you're using AI, you're using the data, and you're using your brain with it to now coach at a whole different level, to now give advice at a whole different level, and help them perform at a whole nother level.
Have you seen the MIT research that came out recently?
No.
So they did scans on people's brain that use ChatGPT, and don't quote my number on this. It might be a little bit inflated, but I think it was like they had a 40 to 60% lower ability to critically think. Right? So cool. ChatGPT is answering a lot of questions for us very rapidly and fast and making things more efficient. But are we eventually over time going to solely rely on the system when I'm already seeing it in folks in general? People do not know how to critically think. We just are reactive. We make quick decisions that if we just sat there for like 30 seconds and just thought about the situation and what we could do and how we could figure it out, we could probably come up with a solution. Rather, we go instantly to Google, instantly to our phones, instantly to ChatGPT. We try to find the answer right away. Like, we got to be able to challenge and use our minds a little bit and not always take the easy way out 24/7 and think about how can we use ChatGPT tactfully, but not to the extent where now it's going to be taking away our everyday general abilities to figure stuff out, right? Or if I don't critically think and I don't have the answers right away, then what am I going to be able to do? I'm just going to go in meltdown mode every time. That's not going to make us very adaptable either.
Big time. I think the thinking critically is, it's almost like, you doing handing a calculator to someone who has no idea what math is and telling him to start mathing. It doesn't work. You got to know how to do it on pen and paper. You got to know the principles. You got to know the background. You have to study it, right? And then the calculator helps you do it that much faster. But you can't just go right into ChatGPT and be like, okay, I'm going to be a nutritionist now and give me the best plan.
Some people try to, though.
Yeah, they try to. And that's where they're probably seeing the problem solving go down, because now they're like, I don't need to solve any problems. This computer will do it for me.
I had a client come to me. He goes, hey, I made myself a meal plan. I think I'm good to go. And he sent it to me, and I was like, I just ran through. I was like, well, that's not correct. And how did it calculate this? And how did it do this? And I asked him probably 5 to 10 questions. And he didn't know, right? Because he just threw I want this, and he threw that in there. But he didn't think of all the other possible scenarios that went into creating and developing that. He's kind of like, oh, okay, I guess I see what you're saying now. It made a kind of hasty decision too fast. It makes a lot more sense how you methodically are going through this versus what I just did.
Big time. So having that expert in your hip pocket, that the expert is maybe using AI, but not relying on AI. He's relying on his education, his past experiences, the whole nine to get you where you want to be. Shawn, this has been an awesome conversation. Where can people find you at on social media, online, to follow some of the great stuff that you got going on?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. Just look up Shawn Pitcher. You can also do tactical_RD on Instagram. I've got my link tree on there. So if anyone's interested in chatting, whether it's about services or about just, shooting the shit and talking shop, I'm always open to learning from other individuals. I think the best thing you could do as any practitioner, or your case as a businessman, right? There's always somebody you can learn from. It doesn't matter if they're 20 years old. It doesn't matter if they've been in the field for 30 or 40 years. Having a growth mindset, having an open mind, and being able to learn from others, I think is something that we can continue to do the rest of our lives. So they're only going to help us develop to be better humans and better practitioners over time.
Big time. Whether you're a quarterback, whether you're a helicopter pilot, or whether you're just functioning individual that wants to be better, having this sort of expert advice and help in your life will help you get where you want to be that much faster. Everyone, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the Fan Day Nation so you don't miss out on future episodes. Thanks for listening again, and we'll see you next time.